I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Thursday and we are talking about Week 15. No teams on a bye, so we're back to 16 full matchups and kicking off tonight with a battle in the NFC South. The 4-9 Atlanta Falcons at the 7-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Big time game for the Buccaneers because they are now in a record-wise tie with the Carolina Panthers, so they got a dogfight down the stretch. Falcons, meanwhile, another lost season. They are also going to be without Drake London again tonight. It feels like Kyle Pitts has kind of stepped up the last few games. Do you think he's the best option to pick up the slack this week?
If I have to start one guy out of the receiving group, it's Kyle Pitts. He's dominating the targets. If I have to start one wide receiver, it's Mooney. While some games Mooney is getting outsnapped by David Sills, Sills isn't really producing. A couple games ago, he had a touchdown, but he's getting 3 or 4 targets a game. Sills, I think, came out of West Virginia, maybe, 5 years ago, was kind of one of those dynasty sleeper darlings. He's bounced around the league. God bless him for sticking with it. And, you know, one thing I've always told Cole is like, look, dude, be ready when your number is called. And Sills has been fighting. He's out there. He's blocks hard. He's earning snaps. Whether or not he can convert that into fantasy production and real world production remains to be seen. But he kind of is on the trajectory of Noah Brown of the Commanders. When he started out in Dallas, he did a lot of this kind of stuff, scrapped and fought, blocked, and Sills is a bigger receiver. And then when his number finally got called, he put up some numbers. So, Dylan Drummond is kind of a out of nowhere guy. It's really Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier, and then Mooney. And if you're playing anybody else, you're just hoping for a touchdown.
Meanwhile, for the Buccaneers, Mike Evans is back. He has had a good connection with Baker Mayfield the last couple of years. They obviously still have a couple of good receivers out there with Godwin and Ibuka. But what are you expecting from Mike Evans in his first game back?
So talk is that they're going to kind of manage his snaps, kind of ease him back into it. I think he's going to try to play as much as he can. He wants to get in there and show he's still got it. It'll probably be helpful to Godwin and Ibuka to have him out there. Jalen McMillan also is active tonight. So it'll be him and Tez Johnson as the wide receiver 4s. Cade Otton is out. So I don't know that I'm going to expect a whole lot from Keith or any of the other tight ends whose names I don't remember. But, Evans is just a different type of receiver than Ibuka or Godwin. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, decent speed, can battle. So Baker likes him. I joked last show, but, he only needed, 240 yards a game or something.
He needs 870 now in 4 games. So it's under 220, actually. Yeah, feels doable.
Yeah. But, I think he probably is the third wide receiver when it comes to snap count. they'll work in Tez Johnson and Sterling Shepard, and probably even get McMillan involved for a couple plays. He was a guy I liked in the off season for that wide receiver 3 spot there in Tampa, alongside Godwin and Mike Evans. He flashed last year. I think he's got some ability. Right now, if everybody is healthy in Tampa, having Tez Johnson and Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard as your 4, 5, 6 is an embarrassment of riches.
I'm taking the Buccaneers. They really need it. I think you said you were too. The Cleveland Browns 3-10 at the 9-4 Chicago Bears. Dennis, we've been excited about Quinshon Judkins. He started kind of hot and heavy, but of late it's been a little bit of a slog. Only 100-yard game. He's still getting a lot of volume, but he only has one game with 90 or more yards since October 5th. Hasn't gotten touchdowns last few games. They're not a great offense. How are you feeling about him for fantasy?
He's a volume dependent, touchdown dependent RB2. He's not very efficient behind a porous and injured offensive line. Shadur Sanders has either proved everybody wrong or far exceeded your expectations. There's no in between. You either thought he was going to be great and he's showing you he is, or you thought he was going to be awful and you're like, well, he's serviceable. So we'll see what happens. Can he, he certainly has a connection with Harold Fannin. If he can get Jerry Jeudy, going well, I think Cedric Tillman is banged up again, going through concussion protocol. It really comes down to if the passing game can open up some space for Judkins, he could be productive. I like what Judkins brings to the table, but he's not, in the Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor class by any stretch of the imagination. He may be #2 to 3 year window plus.
Yeah.
Plus what? I don't know.
For Chicago, we talked about going into the season, they have kind of an embarrassment of riches among pass catchers, but that has led to what I will charitably describe as fantasy frustration. Rome Odunze started red hot the first 4 weeks. He's been wide receiver 48 since they came back. DJ Moore seems to pop up like once a month. Luther Burden is yet to really take off. Sometimes they throw it to Olamide Zaccheaus. Sometimes they throw it to Leveland. Sometimes it's Komet. Is there a Bears pass catcher you actually trust going into the fantasy playoffs?
So it comes down to trust them to do what? It feels like the shift to Burden is afoot. He's had at least 5 targets in the last 4 games, which are his season highs. He's had at least 3 receptions in the last 5. So he's getting some opportunity. He hasn't really stepped up, and his yardage high the last 5 games is just 67 yards. He hasn't put it in the end zone, so he needs to start to produce a little bit more there. But we've talked, I think, ad nauseum about the chaotic nature of Caleb Williams' game and how Ben Johnson and him are really, they go back and forth, it feels like, between working in sync to get the most out of Burden and the Williams in the passing game and Williams' innate urge to freelance. I think with his speed, it's easy for him to try to get away, think he can make stuff happen. And I think Johnson is trying to help him figure out, hey, when is the best time to throw it away and then go make the next play instead of take a risk. I like what Burden brings to the table. I like Rome Odunze. It feels like DJ Moore is the odd man out. He's the one I'm most scared to play, is DJ Moore, because it just feels like Ben Johnson has said, I don't even know why you're here, dude. I'm playing you because we're paying you X amount of money. So get out there and don't screw anything up.
You're saying the one reception for -4 yards last week
Yeah.
didn't really do it for you?
Not at all. If he had, honestly, I got knocked out of Scott Fishbowl by 11 points. And if Burden had had just an average game, I'd have made it to the next round. But anyways.
I am still taking Chicago, though, here.
So am I.
Next up, the 6-7 Baltimore Ravens at the 4-9 Cincinnati Bengals. These are the two teams chasing the Steelers right now. Dennis, Lamar Jackson has been in a funk since week 10. He's only quarterback 15. Last time he played the Bengals on Thanksgiving night, only 7.5 fantasy points, despite them having a somewhat fantasy-friendly defense. So it's the playoffs. How are you feeling if you've got Lamar Jackson?
Well, I like him this week because he's playing the Bengals. Whether or not that means he can put up enough points for the Ravens to win the game, because the Bengals can score points. If they can't stop you from scoring, but they can score points. So I still feel like there's some pizzazz to Lamar's game. He's got the ability to get things done. It's been hit or miss in the passing game. Andrews hasn't been on. He hasn't put up the numbers we're used to seeing. Zay Flowers runs hot and cold. And honestly, it feels like we're seeing the slowing down of King Henry. And all of this is kind of coming together to make Baltimore a little less productive than we'd like to see. And Lamar's banged up this year a little bit too. I think he's got a heel or a calf injury. For me, I like Lamar this week because I hate the Bengals defense. I just think they're terrible. So while Lamar may struggle at times, I think after the last game against the Bengals, he's looking to put up big numbers.
Well, speaking of the last game, the Bengals, Jamar Chase went off on that Thanksgiving game, had a huge week. Looks like T. Higgins may miss again for a concussion, which was the same thing that happened on Thanksgiving. How are you feeling about Chase this week?
I always feel good about Chase. I mean, what's not to feel? I feel good about Chase Brown too, on the other side of the ball, or on the Bengals side of the ball. So it's like a chase square, double chase kind of situation there. Sorry, that was a terrible George Bush impression.
The discount double chase. I am actually taking the Bengals this week. I've gone back and forth, and I actually have it blank. I think I want to take the Bengals at home too. I think I'm going to ride your coattail on this. Next up, the 9-4 Los Angeles Chargers at the 6-7 Kansas City Chiefs. We know there's some woes on the offensive line, but it seems like after a hot start for a number of Chargers receivers, the only one that seems to be steadily working for us in fantasy is Ladd McConkey. How are you feeling about this pass catching group?
So I like Oronde Gadsden, but he's cooled off as well. Getting Omari and Hampton
he's ice cold. He's an ice cube now.
Getting Omari and Hampton back is certainly a good thing for that offense. Last week was the off week for Kamani Vidal, so I don't think we really expected much from him, even if Hampton wasn't activated, because he's literally been every other week. He's putting up big numbers, and last week wasn't that week. I don't think he'll do much this week. I think Hampton showed, hey, I can go back to my old thing. So Vidal goes to being the change of pace back, maybe some 4-minute work. It's tough to rely on Keenan Allen or Quentin Johnston, though. Johnston, after going like over for a couple games, has bounced back and is at least catching a couple passes here and there. And Trey Harris as well. So a lot of the Chargers passing struggles, I think, are directly related to the offensive line. I actually just traded Jaden Daniels for Justin Herbert for a playoff. I'm third seed in the playoffs, and I've got like the second most points in the league. Like I need to, and Cam Ward was my only quarterback in a super flex league. So I'm like, I got to make a move here. I've got Jonathan Taylor and Jameer. I've got like a great, outside of quarterback, I've got a great team. If I'm going to make a run, I got to get a quarterback. So now I'm hoping Herbert holds up behind that line.
Meanwhile, for the Chiefs, it was a rough week for Travis Kelce last week. Took some flack in the media. In the past, we've seen off of kind of rough circumstances, players kind of show out. Back home, must-win game against the Chargers. Do you like him this week?
I mean, you kind of always like Travis Kelce, but he's kind of going the way of Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews this year. And part of it is I think the coming out of age of Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy's playing well. Hollywood Brown is still he's an excellent third option. So now Kelce, over the last couple of years where he's had to carry the load, doesn't have to carry the load. Let's see where the Chargers are in fantasy points to tight ends. Oh, they're way down there. They give up 9th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So it isn't necessarily going to be a great matchup for Kelce. I think there's still a lot of, relying on the mystique of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, which I think is kind of worn off this year. I'm not expecting the Chiefs to make the playoffs, and I'm picking the Chargers in this game.
I am picking the Chiefs. Probably the biggest matchup of the early window, maybe the game of the week, is the 9-4 Buffalo Bills at the 11-2 New England Patriots. Dennis, it's been a rough couple weeks. We chronicled for James Cook. He's put the ball on the ground a few times. The Patriots defense has been pretty stingy against the run. They effectively took him out in their first meeting. Can he be a factor in this rematch?
He can be. I think they have to use him both in the run and pass game. But the Bills kind of go the way of Josh Allen. So he's going to need to produce in the passing game to be able to give James Cook an opportunity. If Cook can make, if he gets some room, he can produce, he can perform.
Another team that's going kind of mercurial trying to figure out which receiver you want is the New England Patriots. I still like Stephon Diggs, but he's not playing a ton of snaps. Feels like he's kind of bigger play dependent. So you have a week now where all 32 teams are in action. You have 16 games. It's a playoff scenario for you. So are there any any Patriot pass catchers that you're feeling confident in?
So Hunter Henry was the way to go early, and he's kind of faded a little bit. I have a soft spot for Kayshon Boutte. I'm a Boutte guy. And he got banged up a little bit, and his production started to drop. Stephon Diggs is still good, and it's not a surprise if he shows out. I think he was out last week, wasn't he? No?
They had a bye. They had a bye week.
Oh, that's right.
So yes, he was out, but not because of injury.
Right. No, but like they have some skill at the position. Kyle Williams has flashed a little bit as a rookie. Pop Douglas works well out of the slot. If I have to start one, I think you have to go with Diggs. But Boutte kind of feels more like the boom bust risk reward guy, whereas Diggs feels more like the floor guy.
I'm going to take the Bills to win this rematch.
I'm taking the Patriots.
Next up, the 3-10 Washington Commanders at the 2-11 New York Giants. They have ruled out Jaden Daniels for this week, but they refuse to rule him out for the rest of the season, even though he re-injured that elbow that suffered a gruesome injury last week. The Commanders are 3-10. They're not going anywhere. Does it make any sense to potentially trot Jaden Daniels back out there again this season?
Not a lick of sense. Put him on ice. You don't need to play these games. Oh, well, he may be back. We might, you might what? Ride Mariota. He's serviceable in that offense. And if he gets injured, I don't even know who their third. Put Chris Rodriguez at quarterback for all I care. No, I think it bums me out a little bit for Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. It doesn't make sense to try to force Jaden Daniels back in there. He's not going to make money on incentives. There's no real incentive on a 3-10 team to put your potential star quarterback at risk again. Unnecessary risk.
Their third quarterback is Josh Johnson, so they actually have two really experienced backups. I'm with you. Meanwhile, for the Giants, Jackson Dart's been a lot of fun this season. I actually think this is a very winnable game for the Giants against a not-so-hot Commanders defense. What are you expecting from Dart this week?
So Dart has a nice connection going with Isaiah Hodgins, and Wan'Dale Robinson has had a phenomenal year. Robinson was performing well even before Neighbors got hurt. Theo Johnson has had nice production from the tight end spot. So they do have some players there that can grow with Jackson Dart that he seems to be making a connection with. Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary have been serviceable at the running back position. I think Dart's going to continue to do what he does. He's going to make some plays with his legs. He's going to force the ball into some tight spots. Maybe he's successful. Maybe he's not. Maybe he completes 70% of his passes. Maybe he completes 55%. But he's almost like he's the Cam Scatterbo of quarterbacks, I think.
I'm still taking the Giants. I think they get a win and it'll be fun. The 2-11 Las Vegas Raiders at the 8-5 Philadelphia Eagles. Geno Smith is doubtful. Looks like it's Kenny Pickett time. But a better question, we know they have an all-world tight end in Brock Bowers, but what the heck are you doing with the Raiders receivers?
It sure feels like Tyler Lockett is the answer to that question. Really, I lean towards Trey Tucker. He's the de facto number one. So Tucker will get the target volume, whether or not he can convert that into actual production. That's been inconsistent. Geno and Lockett, again, that feels like a floor connection. If you're looking for 6 or 8 or 10 points, it seems like Geno and Lockett are the way to go there. Tucker is the guy that feels like he can give you 80 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown.
Meanwhile, for the Eagles, can we get a bounce back game for Jalen Hurts?
There's not many better teams in the league to bounce back against.
It's probably true. Even Bo Nix looked good last week. I am taking the Eagles.
So am I.
The 3-10 New York Jets at the 9-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. Neither Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields are able to practice, so it's looking a lot like Brady Cook again. They declined to open the practice window for Garrett Wilson, so no hope there. Is the Jets' pass offense just kind of a stay away this week?
I mean, we don't like Brady Cook. Yeah, it's a void.
Jaguars.
It's an avoid like the plague. I don't want any receivers. I don't want tight ends. I don't want Breece Hall. This feels like it's going to be one of those games where Breece Hall gets 24 carries, for 52 yards, and the Jets have 14 or 15 pass attempts for 79 yards and a 14-minute time of possession deficit. And Aaron Glenn just says, you know what? There's no point in trying to do stupid stuff with this quarterback and these wide receivers. We'll do our 3 and outs, and we'll run the ball. We'll punt. Yeah,
Well, I mean, I have some bad news for you because Brees Hall has a knee injury and is also not practicing, and neither is Mason Taylor. So it's getting dark early. It might be a healthy dose of Isaiah Davis, and I don't know who their punter is, but if you have punt points in your league, that's the punter you want.
that is.
Meanwhile, for the Jaguars, Brenton Strange was super hot when he came back. Hasn't been quite as hot the last couple of weeks, but how do you like him in the tight end landscape?
I like Strange just fine. I think he is a guy that fits that offense pretty well, but he's had 14, 13, and 6 points in his 3 games back. I think that he is a guy that's probably going to most often get you 8 to 12 points. He's going to have a couple weeks where, he puts up a 2 touchdown game. He may have a week here or there where he puts up 80 or 90 yards receiving, but he feels pretty comfortably a guy that's going to be able to get you 10, 12 points, 14 points on a weekly basis.
Speaking of points, I am taking the Jaguars.
So am I.
3-10 Arizona Cardinals at the 8-5 Houston Texans. Dennis, we're still waiting to see if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be able to play this week. He is still not practicing, but in his stead, Michael Wilson has been incredible, putting up much bigger stats than Harrison seems to be putting in. Is it possible Wilson is a better fit in this offense with this quarterback than Marvin Harrison is?
Well, I don't know that Marvin has had a ton of games with Jacoby Brissett. I think Marvin, his first game with Brissett, put up nice numbers, and I think honestly it's Brissett over Murray for either one of them. It comes down the hard thing really is when you've got Wilson and Harrison in there, Trey McBride is still going to get his. So something's got to give somewhere. Either both of them are going to be down or one of them is going to be way down. But no, Wilson, we liked Wilson coming out. He just had injury history in college, but he's got good size, good speed. He catches the ball well. And by and large, he stayed healthy while he's been in the NFL. And when given the opportunity, he's producing. He's like right on that. He could be T. Higgins.
Meanwhile, for Houston, Nick Chubb not looking like he's going to play. Woody Marks got a heavy load last week, and he's facing an Arizona team that not spectacular on defense. Could this be a big week from Woody Marks?
Yeah. Cardinals give up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. And while the yardage is kind of middle of the pack, they give up the 3rd most rushing touchdowns and the 2nd most passing touchdowns to running backs. And if nothing else, Woody Marks was vaunted for his ability as a pass catcher coming out of college.
I am taking those Texans.
So am I.
The 9-3-1 Green Bay Packers at the 11-2 Denver Broncos, now onto the afternoon games. Dennis, Jordan Love has had a couple of huge weeks the last 2 weeks against the Lions and the Bears, but facing a pretty stout defense on the road in Denver. How are you feeling about him this week?
I think he kind of reverts to form back in that QB 18 range, going up against Perry Moss and Patrick Surtain and whoever the hell else I'm missing back there. That's a tough
McMillan, Jahdae Barron.
Yeah, that's a tough defense to play against at all 3 levels. And we have not seen Love as an elevator just yet. Love is a good distributor, point guard type of quarterback, game manager plus at this point in his career. He isn't, young Aaron Rodgers or young Tom Brady or older Tom Brady. He's not one of these guys that's able to put the team on his back and will them to victory, a la Allen or Mahomes or anything. He's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. It's, a lot of times we're looking around at teams and they're like, oh, you need to get rid of this quarterback. It's like, well, and replace him with who? Or you need to get rid of this head coach and replace him with who? Like who out there? Like when people are calling for Ryan Day's head here in Columbus, we're all the time like, and replace him with who? Like, what's your solution?
I think Love will be fine as your QB2, but I think people were getting excited that maybe he's working back in the MVP race, might be going back to being a quarterback one. I'm not so fast. Meanwhile, for Denver, Cortland Sutton pretty well locked in solidly as the number one, but it's been a rotation among their supporting players. Pat Bryant not practicing, not looking good for him. Do you have any love for Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims this week?
So I loved Marvin Mims coming into the season, and he's after a little bit of a higher volume start, he's kind of become a special teamer. He gets in there for some gadget plays, and they'll still put him in, and but he's not running a super high volume of routes. I love that Pat Bryant is kind of taken over as the other guy, but Troy Franklin is still a guy that has a connection with Knicks going back to college, and he provides, I think, a little more of a deep threat than either Sutton or Bryant. And if Bryant is out, are the three? Is it Mims and Franklin? And
yeah, Mims.
Who runs out of the slot with that group?
Probably Mims.
Okay.
Or Franklin, because in the last couple of weeks they've been kicking Franklin inside and putting Pat Bryant on the outside, so it actually might be Franklin.
Yeah, so
they also use Evan Ingram much.
Yeah, he's popped off the last couple of weeks, so
I mean, it's kind of MIA last week. That's my only frustration with Denver. You're pretty set with Sutton, although sometimes there's games that give me pause. RJ Harvey's getting pretty good volume, but one of the other guys I feel like is going to be good. I don't always feel confident about which one. It looked like it was going to be Franklin there for a while, but then he was faded to Bryant, so I wonder if it'll come back to Franklin. But either way, I am taking the Denver Broncos.
So am I.
The 8-5 Detroit Lions at the 10-3 Los Angeles Rams, a huge game for the NFC playoff picture. Dennis, the Lions offense has been a little up and down. They were great last week. Can they keep it up in Los Angeles?
So this is a really, really tough matchup for Detroit because we laud Dan Campbell for his guts versus Sean McVay for his ability to scheme and his brain. And so now it's basically, this is a brains against brawn matchup between McVay and Campbell. And I have concerns that Campbell is gonna, slap his Randy Marsh big balls out there and just make some stupid decisions, giving the Rams short to midfields because they don't convert against a tough Rams defense. That being said, the Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams have every bit as much explosiveness, maybe more than the Rams. So can they keep up? They can. I think they're going to need a couple breaks. I think Detroit's defense is a notch below the Rams defense. And that makes me nervous, especially out at the cornerback position for Detroit.
Meanwhile, for the Rams, we've seen a couple big weeks in a row for Blake Corum. Last week actually led them in carries and yardage, although I think that had more to do with it being a blowout. But is there any concern going into a fantasy playoff week about him eating into the upside of Kyron Williams?
So Williams has dropped from RB 8 or 9 through the first, I think, 6 or 7 weeks. And over the last 6 or 7, 5, whatever it is, he's around the RB 15. So Corum is making an impact. Corum provides some explosiveness that Kyron doesn't have. Kyron has exceptional vision. He's a smaller David Montgomery. You know, he isn't going to turn 8 yards into 80, but he'll turn, 5 yards into 12. That's just what Kyron does. They don't use the running backs in the passing game, whether it's Corum or Williams, to speak of. It all comes down to Puka and Devontae Adams, and then they'll sprinkle in another wide receiver or the tight ends. But I don't think I'm overly concerned. Is there a chance that, because what we've seen is basically in the carries, it's been 65-35 between Williams and Corum. The edge has been Williams being explosive and being able to, bust off a 30-yarder, take one to the house from 20 yards kind of approach. But I'm probably more concerned if I have Kyron Williams in Dynasty than I am for the rest of this year.
It pains me to do it, but I am taking the Rams.
This is another game I didn't pick. I was waiting to pick and see, and I just can't bring myself to pick against the Lions. I'm going to make a homer pick and take the Lions.
Another big game, the 7-6 Carolina Panthers at the 3-10 New Orleans Saints. Panthers really have a decent chance to stay up and stay in with 2 matches against the Buccaneers yet to come. Going into their bye week, they kind of went back to splitting carries between Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard, which gave me pause. And the news stories coming out of the bye week are that they want to find a way to get Chuba Hubbard more touches and more involved. We had been blessed with some Rico Dowdle breakout in the middle of the season, but are you a little nervous now that this split might bring him back to the pack?
Yeah, it's really, it's a dreaded hot hand situation. I think they're going to start out with the split and see who gives them the production, and then they'll slant the touches in that direction. And if that person doesn't follow up with big production, then they'll lean back the other direction. But if we have somebody like Hubbard did a couple weeks ago, where he busts out, has big gains in the passing game and stuff, makes some nice runs, I could see Dowdle getting froze out. I think they expect and want it to be Dowdle because he's a little more explosive, but I don't think ultimately they care. They just want one of them to put up numbers every time they're on the field.
Alvin Kamara missed the last couple of weeks, is questionable, still dealing with that ankle injury. Devin Neal also a little questionable with an abdomen injury. If Kamara is back, how are you feeling about him?
It sure feels snap share, opportunity share, kind of a 50-50 proposition, with Neal getting more in the run game and Kamara getting more in the passing game. But Neal's got to hold up. If he's banged up, we could see Audric Estime, and that's not good for anybody.
I mean, it's good for Audric Estime's agent, but I am taking the Panthers in this one.
I'm starting to feel a little bit of that it girl mojo from Tyler Shook. I'm going to go with the Saints.
That would be certainly interesting. Next up, the 2-11 Tennessee Titans at the 9-4 San Francisco 49ers. Last week, Tony Pollard simply exploded. He actually moved from RB32 on the season to RB25 with one monster game. Can he do it again?
So the Niners are pretty good against the run, but they give up the most receptions to running backs. So if Tennessee and Cam Ward are willing to target Pollard in the passing game, he could put up another big game and then get enough rushing attempts to kind of, quote unquote, keep him honest. Pollard's a good running back. Him and Dowdle both came out of that Dallas offense and with a chip on their shoulder. So I like Pollard. I think he'll be able to produce some in the run in the receiving game, but I'm not super high on the Titans offense as a whole.
Meanwhile, we like George Kittle when he plays, but aside from him, is there a pass catcher for the 49ers you're really interested in a playoff week?
It all comes down to what are your other options, but Juwan Jennings is the guy I want out of that receiving core right now. Ricky Pearsall has done, to quote Jim Mora, diddly poo since he's been back. And gosh, who's their third? Demarcus Robinson has been super inconsistent. I think I'd almost rather start Jake Tonjes, the backup tight end, over Demarcus Robinson, if I had to. But
well, I mean, their primary pass catchers are really McCaffrey and Kittle, and that's
correct.
Kind of it.
And Jennings is the 3.
I am taking the 49ers.
So am I.
Last of the afternoon games, the 8-5 Indianapolis Colts at the 10-3 Seattle Seahawks. Dennis Riley Leonard has been practicing. His knee was a little banged up, but I don't even see him listed on the injury report anymore. He likely is going to go. I don't think they want to roll 44-year-old Phillip Rivers out there in his first game in 5 years. So how are we feeling about Riley Leonard?
I mean, they're talking like Phillip's going to be ready to roll. They
probably are going to have him as their backup. I just don't think he's going to start.
No. So Leonard coming out of college, he's a gutsy quarterback with plus mobility, can run the ball well, but he doesn't have a great arm, which bodes well for Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, and Michael Pittman. Not so much for Alec Pierce, but he's going up against a pretty stout Seattle defense. I don't think he's going to be worse than Cam Ward, or a couple of these other guys we've seen. He's been
won't be worse than Brady Cook,
right? Or Justin Fields.
I would, this would have been Justin Fields' chance to try to redeem himself, but apparently he's hurt too.
No, I think Leonard will put up last week he was 18 of 29 for 145 against Jacksonville. That feels, like the range.
Meanwhile, for Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba has been incredible. He's wide receiver 1 on the season. He's been a great start week in, week out, only has kind of one dud game the entire season. The rest of the Seahawks, it's been a total gamble. Sometimes they use 3 or 4 backs in the backfield. Sometimes AJ Barner's involved, sometimes not. Aside from JSN in a gots to have it playoff week, is there any Seahawk you're trusting in your lineup?
I'm not sticking any other Seahawk in my lineup unless I swing by the CVS and pick myself up some Pepto-Bismol. Cooper Kupp could give you 4 for 60 and a touchdown, or Rashid Shaheed could give you 2 for 90 and a touchdown, or they both could go 4 targets, 1 catch, 3 yards, 0 TDs. Barner is inconsistent. The backfields, they both have decent enough numbers that you go, man, I wish this guy could play a whole game, but they can't. They won't play either one of them 25 carries. It's just maddening.
They're a great NFL team. They're a very frustrating fantasy team, but I am still taking them to get the win at home.
So am I.
The 5-8 Minnesota Vikings at the 6-1 Dallas Cowboys. That is the Sunday night football matchup that I'm sure they've been dreaming about. JJ McCarthy surprised us and was pretty good last week. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. His team won. Dallas doesn't have what you might call a spectacular defense. Could J.J. McCarthy do it again?
Maybe, but I mean, yes, he had 3 touchdowns, but he only threw for 163 yards. I get it. You work with the field you're given. Dallas's defense is improved some. They've got some more playmakers up front and at linebacker, and I think it'll come down to, are they able to confuse McCarthy? That's really the he throws the ball well enough. He's got plus mobility and escapability. Can the defense confuse him and make him unsure of what he's seeing and have to think about stuff? Dallas has added since the trade deadline, they've added 4 or 5 guys via trade or coming back from injury to that defense. Are they gelling, and are they able to continue?
I thought they were until they played Detroit.
Right. On one hand, I want to be like, oh, well, it's because they played Detroit. It isn't that they.
Well, it might be. They played Detroit. You never know. For Dallas, Javonte Williams started out kind of red hot. A lot of people talking about him. To me, he's remained steady. You don't hear a lot of talk about him week to week, but are you still feeling pretty good about rolling him in your lineup?
Yeah, he's still a RB1. Like any position player, you're going to have down week here or there. Brian Flores' defense, they've got that defense can play pretty well and make some plays, but I think Dak has been around long enough, and I think Schottenheimer schemes up a good enough offense that with playmakers like Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, it opens up opportunity for Javonte Williams. So I think he'll be just fine. I'm very comfortable starting him going into the playoffs.
And let's just say I'm not buying McCarthy doing it again. I'm taking the Cowboys.
So am I.
Monday Night Football, 6-7 Miami Dolphins at the 7-6 Pittsburgh Steelers. Both teams actually still alive in the playoff race. What a year. On Achan, if you have a high seed or a good team in the playoffs, it might well be a result of you having him on your team and the performances he's put up. Got dinged up last week, has a rib injury, questionable. What is your strategy? It is a Monday night game. That is kind of a big. I know I faced this with at least one of my playoff teams, and I've looked at my options, and I'm leaving him in my lineup, and I'm praying that he is a good contributor. But how are you feeling about that?
So what's great about rib injuries?
Nothing.
You just give you that little shot right there. If it's not shattered, you just numb that shit up, roll right on. No, I think Achan will be just fine. He got a little bruised up. He's not a big dude. He's only about 85 pounds, 5'9", pretty elusive. But man, even those little guys get tagged once in a while. So I like the fight the Dolphins are showing. And it's, we said early on when Chris Greer got fired, where we talked about what's Mike McDaniel have to do. And we're like, we didn't.
I think he's doing it.
Yeah, we didn't think he had to make the playoffs, but the team had to show they were fighting for him, and they are. And
I can say they have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. So no, I like what the Dolphins are doing with the narrow funnel with Darren Waller back. I think that provides a little bit of a boost there. Jalen Waddle's playing great. Malik Washington is filling his role, and then Devon Achan. And now they've got one of the deepest running back rooms in the league with the return of Jalen Wright and rookie Ollie Gordon.
Speaking of running backs, on the other side, it's been kind of a quietly steady season for Jaylen Warren, actually running back 18 on the season. How are you feeling about him going into the fantasy playoffs?
Man, I'd feel a lot better if they let him get some of those touchdowns they keep giving to Kenny Gainwell. He's probably 2 or 3 of those Gainwell touchdowns away from being an RB1. Now I like Jaylen Warren. He's the number one there. but they just, Kenny Gainwell provides something they don't think Warren does. And so he gets opportunity. I like Jaylen Warren. I think he's a good option as an RB2. If he's my flex, even better.
Yeah, and to your point, Gainwell RB21, so they're pretty close. You can probably play them both. I am going to take the Steelers at home.
I'm taking the Dolphins. TJ Watt is banged up, and
I'm a little worried about that. I thought they played a little better last week, though, but it would be the most an AFC North 2025 thing for them to lose and the Bengals to win, and this to be a 3-team race again. That'll do it for the Week 15 schedule. Dennis, not as many college games this weekend. I think just Army Navy, right? So
Ohio State's not playing. I don't know anything else.
Yeah, Michigan's glad they're not playing either. Their coach is playing something. Their ex-coach is playing something. But Dennis, if people have a lot of free time on their hands, what can they do?
Swing on over to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search button, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Give us a subscribe, give us a like.
And it seems that in our show league, in the redraft league, both you and I finished as the top seeds and have buys this week. So that's going to be kind of interesting. And then you also got a buy, I believe, in the Dynasty League as well, correct?
I think so. I think I'm the number 1 seed in the Dynasty League.
Yep, you're the number 1 seed in both leagues. It feels like you've taken over my mantle from where I finished last week. Are you feeling pretty good going into the playoffs?
I am, because I don't have to set any lineups this week. I'm definitely good this week.
I know I did get a few buys in a few leagues, but there's a couple other ones. I'm feeling good. We're gonna see how first round of the playoffs go. But I
think I have in total. I think I got 4 first round buys. Unfortunately, I had one rebuild that ended up a 6 seed. That sucked.
Yeah, I know. I have a team. I was shocked when I saw I made the playoffs because I've been setting a lineup. I started at 0-7 on that team, but apparently I won 7 in a row and got in on a tiebreaker for points 4 to be the 6th seed. And I'm like, well, I really just screwed myself on the draft picks, but it's the way it goes sometimes. Well, let's hope all of our teams do well, both fantasy teams and our NFL teams. We will see you guys on Tuesday recapping Week 15. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.